Death Pixie disclaimer. This video was originally recorded in September 2024. There is swearing and profanity. Sources are listed in the description. This video is not monetized. Any ads you see provide revenue to the hosting site, not the creators. If you made it this far, geez, you have a lot of patience.
Dance Pixie dancing on the lip of madness.
Welcome to Shitty PowerPoint Theater. Dignity not included.
Now, I bet you're thinking, that's it. That's all Muri has for us with this celebratory episode. No, it's not. No, it's not, because Crabsworth helped me really create something that was a labor of love for him. And that is our scale of shade. So we're not going to be seeing Justin Trudeau on it. We've already said why.
Yeah.
But just know he's still who wouldn't tap that 10 on the tap that scale. So he got his dues. He is the king of memes, and we celebrated that appropriately, but you won't be seeing him on the shade scale. Now, for the labor of love from Crabsworth, scale of shade.
Yeah.
So we have the shady scale. Now, there are a few awards to give out. But we're actually gonna go in order, and then I'll announce your special awards.
Yep.
So we're going in Prime Minister order. So John A. MacDonald is a 9. You said even shit-faced he had gold.
Yeah, he does. Have you ever looked at? Can you even look at Canada would rather a drunk John A. than a sober? And not think to yourself, damn, man!
Oh, but
I'm sorry. John A., when he was on fire.
Yep.
And it didn't matter if he was drunk or sober, he could give it to you, he could give it to you hard. There is nobody he would not take the piss out of if he was drunk enough. And such a witty drunk, too.
Yeah, it's. I'm sure it must have been difficult to live with, but damn entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, this is the shady scale.
Yeah, we don't care about their political affiliations.
No, we don't. Next up is Alexander Mackenzie. Wholesome but boring.
Wholesome but very boring if you look through his quotes. There is no bigger crime on this list than being boring. You are in the highest office of the land. I demand my entertainment, and I get it from your shade. Mackenzie, you robbed me of that. So boring, wholesome, very wholesome, but very boring.
Next we have Abbott.
Yeah. And Abbott was Abbott's surprising.
Yeah.
With the amount of shade he actually had us. Abbott is surprising, and you wouldn't expect that out of him. Given his upbringing, but you've heard the quotes.
Oh, yeah. Now, we get to Thompson, and people might argue you on this, because for you, one-hit wonder, but what a hit it was.
Oh, my God. It is beautiful. I know you've got the one-hit wonder quote.
Yeah. Oh, it was.
I just want to hear it again.
It was about the United States.
Yeah.
So it was a brilliant quote. Here,
it's a brilliant quote at a brilliant time.
Yes.
And it's still poignant 200 years later.
These
Yankee politicians are the lowest race of thieves in existence.
Yep.
It is still massive. It is massive in its hit. And it is still felt to this day. I don't care if people argue me on this. It is probably the single biggest hit you can give. If we had to give an award for the single best period of shade, it would be him.
Next up, we have Bull, which you described as the cool uncle.
Yeah. You don't expect cool Uncle Bull
Yeah.
to give out the shade. Like, he's a decent guy. But when he gives it, it is there. And you know the kind of thing when your grandmother swears at you and you go and you do a double take, like, did you just say that?
Yeah.
That's what you get out of him.
Now, the next one up, this was one where there were two people who you just would not stop saying boring about.
Yes.
And this is one of them. That would be Tupper.
Tupper, you boring SOB. There is no bigger crime than being boring! Boring! Boring, boring, boring!
Now, I know how you feel about Wilfrid Laurier.
Yep.
And the thing is, though, when it came to shade, he was on a 3.
He was wholesome. He was wholesome in his shade. It was there. But given how long Waffly Willie was in office, and given how much time he actually had for quotes, if the best we can get is compromising Canada, about Canada's liberties, if that is the best we can get, boring. Boring!
Next up is Borden. Now, to be fair, he was a wartime prime minister.
Yeah.
Not a lot of opportunities for shade.
No, and that's why I think we looked on him a little bit more favorably.
A
Because-
respectable 4.
Yeah, and it's one of those cases again where Robert Borden presented himself in such a way that when he did throw shade, you did a second take. You're like, wait a minute, what? That's coming from you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know maybe we inflated Borden a little bit given his wartime, but even so, when he did throw, he threw.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but it was a lot better than what you expected.
Mm-hmm. Next up is Megan, and we've already said him and King going against each other. CBC, where are you with our Amadeus movie about the two of them? We got him at an 8.
Yeah. The stuff that he threw against King was a stuff of legends.
Yes.
Nobody can take that away.
Which brings us to King, and he's sitting at a 10.
Yeah. Yes, he is.
Because, oh my god, the shade thrown at the prairies.
Oh my god.
Was just shade in general, but the shade at the prairies, like, oh, you can't say that.
No.
You can't say that.
And
He
even
said
then,
it.
even at the time, they were like, he said, you can't say that.
Yeah. But he said it.
Yeah.
And, from a keeping Western relations perspective, not a good look. From a
No.
shade perspective, woo, that was
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
Now is the second person who you had one thing to say about them, and that was Bennett.
Boring. Boring! Boring, boring, boring!
You were so enraged by by that.
I'm like, you're in the highest office of the land. Give us something. Anything to go off of. Anything to show your character. The one thing I will say about Donald Trump in the United States, no matter what happened, he showed his character. And
For better or
damned
worse.
damned if he did, damned if he didn't. He showed his character. These boring prime ministers.
Now, Laurent was incredibly wholesome.
Yep.
So you're kind of
wa-
seeing three
Papa
of
Louis.
our wholesome crew,
Yeah,
basically.
Papa Louis, very wholesome.
Yes.
Very wholesome. Very boring.
Now, this might be controversial. So, the Deef isn't as high as he could have been, mostly because
No.
he got nasty.
Yeah. So, show him up on screen here. So, honestly, objectively, if this was made without the penchant for kicking somebody while they're dead. Being an absolute nothing. Being an absolute nothing. The Deef would have been a 10. He would have Revel King. The amount of shade that the Deef threw, and the amount of nasty, vitriolic shade the Deef threw was undeniable and unbelievable.
Yeah.
The problem with shade is there is a difference when you're throwing shade when they're in office.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. That's totally ethical. There's even, I would even argue there's decency in throwing shade when they're out of office, or when a party has to deal with their policy. I can get behind shade there. The instant that you say that someone does not deserve his Nobel Peace Prize, despite being a war hero, despite anchoring some of the biggest legislation in Canadian history, while he's dead, that's too far for me.
Yeah. And that's the biggest example of the nastiness.
Yeah.
There were other examples of it, but that was the predominant one. So yes,
he's entertaining as fuck.
oh yeah.
If you look at it with no shred of decency whatsoever, and again, if you were looking at this on a pure shade scale without any context to any shade, he would be 10 hands down. But there are limits, and human decency is a limit. The Deef, we had to put him at a 6 just based on his level of shade, but we couldn't, in all justification, we can't put him any higher than that.
Now this was a surprising one. This next one was surprising, mostly because of how high he ranked.
Yeah.
And that had to do with when he was shady. It was like, you said this, and that is Lester B. Pearson.
Yeah. Like, we both went through it.
Yeah.
And we were like, are you sure you got the right shade quote? This does not feel like Lester Pearson.
Yeah, and some of it was, and you're just like, you?
Yeah.
You? He's such a wholesome image. He's like,
I could have sworn it. Some of the
the
stuff I could have sworn was from the Deef.
Yeah, was from him.
Yeah.
It just goes to show when you push someone, they'll bite back.
Yeah, but you want to know the one thing he never did? Kick somebody when they're dead.
Yes. But yeah, so he ranked surprising to both of us. Surprisingly high. Next up, I think no one's going to be surprised by this. No one is going to be surprised by this. We have Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and the sheer breadth of the different types of shade he could do.
Oh my
puts him
god!
out
Yes.
of 10. Because
he
could do direct shade, he could do subtext shade, he did legislative shade, he did letter shade. Like, there was so much shade, that so many different types of shade he did. That, like,
and not to mention his FU move.
yes.
Like, yes, it was terrible, but it was shady as fuck.
Oh yeah, so shady. Next up is Joe Clark, who I have to admit was quite respectable out of 5.
Yeah.
So a respectable 5. He ended up actually serving as a bit of an anchor point for us, especially for you when we were making this, because it was sort of like, where do we know people are going to be so that we can compare the others and make sure that it's fair.
Yeah.
I think he earned the respect of Pierre Elliott Trudeau for being able to handle his own without getting like deeply personal or nasty. But yeah, he had some bite to him. So now
Mr. Speaker, if I may continue from where I was so rudely interrupted.
It was so good.
But it's okay, to all the people who are wholesome but boring. That is how you be wholesome and not boring.
Yeah.
Pick your time and your place. Joe Clark did not have a lot of shade, but when he did, he knew the time and the place and the context to do it. It was not the most pointed shade. It wasn't the shadiest of shade, but he knew what he was doing with all of it.
Exactly. The next one we actually never ranked.
No,
And
we
that
didn't.
would be Turner.
I don't think we ever really came to a consensus on his quotes.
We never did. Yeah, Turner is kind of floating over with the shady scale.
Yep.
Sorry about that. If you
He's-
have input, let us know.
Yeah, please. Where would you put Turner?
Next up is Mulrooney, and Mulrooney goes at a 6. Again,
Similar to Diefenbaker.
but I would say he even got more personal nasty rather than shady than
Yeah.
Diefenbaker got, which is again why personal nasty is not the same as shade. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? It's not.
It
It's
may-
not the same.
Oh, it's nowhere even close.
Now he had some great quotes. He had some great shade, but there was also a lot of like personal nastiness that we simply can't overlook.
Including the people of his own party.
Yeah, like it was.
And you get to a point where it's like, okay, dude, okay, we get it. You're kind of spiteful. We get it.
Yeah.
And it drags you down the list. I'm just saying, we got some ethics here.
Next up on the list is Kim Campbell, who
Yep.
ended up actually sitting at a respectable 5 as well. Not the shade queen, but knew when to dish
Yeah,
out.
new one
Had
to give it. Now I will say, if we were ranking this as like lifetime overall, not while they were in office or in political.
She had some
Yeah,
great
she-
shade post office.
Yeah, post office, she'd be easily an 8 or a 9.
Yeah,
Let's be fair here.
I'm
when
actually
she wanted to bring it, she could bring it, but she also understood, dignity, class. Ironically, very similar to Joe Clark.
next up is Krachan. He's at a 6.
Yeah.
This is, I think,
He's
Krachan turned-
not at a 6 for the same reason that the Deef and Mulrooney are at a 6. He is at a 6 because he is so entertaining with all of his shade. It's not the most poignant shade, but we also could not give him a 5 purely because of entertainment value.
It's
There are certain shades where you can't understand what he's saying. That's what keeps him out of the top. There are certain levels of shade where you're like, is that shade, really? Where you could rank him a little lower. He is where he is because of his charisma and his entertainment value.
next up is Paul Martin, who is
Boo.
again. He actually rounded out our respectable 5s, and I think that had more to do with the slinging between
Yeah.
him and Krachan.
Yeah, he was
In
able
the-
to hold his own against Kretchen.
Yeah. And you
Thing
know,
is, I may not have liked him as a PM, but he had to put up with Kretchen.
he also did like this move of, remember when I mentioned Jim Kay, who really helped
Yeah.
Krachan get in? He swooped Jim Kay out from under him, which is just like, what?
Like, that is Wild West level shit.
What? So he gets props for that move. Like,
Yeah.
now next, I have your justification for this position is boring and nasty.
Yeah.
That is Stephen Hubbard.
So let's get into this. Okay. He doesn't have the most poignant shade quotes. His quotes are about attacking Canada's fundamental rights with an extreme religious overtone. And they are done in a way that speaks to a complete ignorance of Canada's populace who aren't white, Christian, male, able-bodied, what have you. And that on top of his "Hello, fellow kids" mantra, I think that's why I couldn't give him a 2 either, because it's nasty on... I'm sorry. Doing that while being religious is one thing. Doing that while being religious, while slinging these beautiful attack ads on Justin Trudeau, which, by the way, if they were going to be in a spot, they'd be high. I love those ads, as terrible as they are, against Deanna Trudeau. But he himself... You ever look and see, okay, that's a guy. That's the uncle we can't invite over for Christmas anymore.
Yep.
That's the guy who took Bobby Joe and wanted to play tummy swords with him and is... Like, that's a vibe you get. That's a vibe you get from his quotes. That's a vibe you get from any media appearance he's ever done. Especially recently. It's not a good look for anybody. It's not a good look.
JT, like I said, he got a whole parade of memes. So special honorable mention, but that's the end of that. Now then, the Shady Overall Award clearly is going to King and Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Now, I know,
could not decide between them.
which means we will be rising them up from the dead, and they will have a zombie horde shade off.
I agree.
That's what will be happening. And I have a slide about that for later.
Yeah. As in the platform.
It is. Just like how we plan to raise Jack Layton from the dead and have zombie Jack Layton join the party as well. Now then, the surprise Shade Award goes to Lester B. Pearson.
Yeah.
Lester B. Pearson, because damn, dude!
Yeah. When he wanted to throw down, he would throw down. It would be thrown and he would win.
Yeah. Now, I had one award to give out, and that was my Disappointment Award. And my disappointment is in the historians around William Lyon Mackenzie King and Arthur Meighen, because we know they were shady. It's in all the parliamentary stuff, but nobody has bothered to pull them out and create a list of shady quotes for each of them. And I am very upset with the historians. I am very upset with the historians around this. How dare you? How dare you not have done that? It's your job to do it, damn it. Why are you in history if not to find historical shade? Anyway, that's it. Crabsworth Hall of Boredom.
Oh, yeah.
You wanted to especially shout out Mackenzie, Tupper, Bennett, and Harper for your Hall of Boredom.
Yep, I absolutely did. So here's the thing. I can excuse Waffly Willie from this because he was not boring as a person. A lot of his stuff was very, very good. I can excuse Papa Louie from this because when he decided to throw, it was very wholesome, but it wasn't as boring as all the others. The Hall of Boredom is reserved for true sticks in the bud. True vanilla ice cream that thinks the vanilla is too strong. And those people that just say, "Hello, fellow kids, you can be safe with me." Would you like to come over for Netflix and chill?
Oh God. Now,
yeah.
I'm sure everybody's wondering who was our marker for zero, and our marker for zero was not actually one of the prime ministers. It is the current federal Conservative Party leader, Pelvier, because simply put, if we haven't made it obvious now, we just think, objectively speaking, somebody like him shouldn't even be in the running. It's just unconscionable.
We didn't think there would be something worse than Stephen Harper.
Yeah, we didn't. And
we didn't.
And then the Conservative Party decided to say, "Hold my beer."
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was
Andrew Scheer came to be Conservative leader. And yeah, he did stuff I didn't agree with, absolutely, but even he was like, "Okay, guys, there's a limit."
Yeah.
And he lost, and that was the limit, apparently. And
So here it is. That is our full disclosure. Take it or leave it. Now, for one final slide that I think is super fun. It's our shade off.
This
is the shade off everyone wants. Come on. Everyone wants this. Everybody wants it.
It's true.
Hey, this is Trapdoor Crabsworth for Death Pixie. If you liked our content, please like this video and subscribe. And if you want to see more, just check out our links in the description. Do it. 200 Miri will kill you.